Hey everybody, this is Scott Patton, the Dean of Blogonomics and Podology, Power Podcasters on Udemy, and I'm really excited because one of our students has got his podcast up and going. I think he's the first one, certainly the first one that's told me. And so Siko, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So how did you find the process of going through Power Podcasters and then actually getting your podcast up and running?
Well, I actually, like a lot of people who start a podcast, you're kind of going like, oh, what am I getting into? And so, like a lot of people, I started looking at multiple resources. I remember going through Pat Flynn's tutorial, and that's already like 2 years old by now, and some other people's tutorials. And then I kept thinking, okay, there's probably another thing missing because it seems like there's so many layers to it. So I started, I'd already recorded a bunch of episodes last year just with my video camera, and I wanted to just have a bunch in the can, which seems to be what a lot of people say, because you're going to get overwhelmed otherwise. And so then I started putting those on, and what I wanted to, and then I found your course, and I wanted to just see if there was anything else I was missing. And you definitely have some great tips in there, and you have a whole section just on speaking, which none of the other places I've seen have that section. So that's great, and I don't remember when exactly I published, somewhere in January, mid-January, and I said, well, let's just do it, let's get going, and because it makes me physically sick to not get it done, to get at least that first episode or the first 3 episodes up, and I just wanted to get it done, get it out there, and just figure it out as I go. Just-in-time learning is a big one for me,
Right.
and doing. I learn by doing. So, and by having some by putting some pressure on myself, it helps me learn faster and learn only the things that I need to know.
You hit on a great point. I've used Microsoft Word forever, and I know exactly how to bold something and underline it and cross it out and delete a mistake, and I'm sure there's a million other things you can do, but why would you learn what you don't need to know, right? Because you're going to forget it. So that was great.
Forget it anyway, right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what your podcast is about.
Well, my podcast is about meditation and mindfulness, and I want it to be an interview podcast so that because first of all, I don't think I want to just talk into a microphone for hours. I can't even imagine. And now that I've got a little more experience, I can see how you can kind of turn a blog post into a solo episode. But for me, the exciting part is learning together and interacting with other people who also have, in my opinion, a lot of wisdom to share, and for me to then bring my own questions to that, and then kind of see how that plays together. And it also it opens it up to a lot more audience, whereas I have no idea if I had my own podcast show whether that would be enough people that be interested. But I know because there's people interested in the guests that I'm having on my show that. By doing it that way, I gain all these new people that might be interested, and it just makes the show more interesting.
Right. Cool. So what would you say is the purpose of your show? One, obviously, is to let people know about mindfulness and meditation, but do you have a book or a CD series or a training or something else that you're looking at generating leads for, or like kind of how you say, okay, we want to do a podcast, but kind of like what do you see as sort of the end goal?
Well, I do. I do think it's going to work into my kind of a brand that I'm creating. I already have an app, and that's just way over my head. I ended up buying an app, a meditation app, because that's something I care about. I started building these timers on YouTube, and then I figured, well, I should get also an app to help people meditate and find spaces of mindfulness, because I do it myself. And then also I'm part of a Udemy. I'm also a Udemy instructor. So I thought, well, this is something I'm so passionate about. I've done it most of my life. Why wouldn't I create a course about that and put my own voice into it? I know there's already tons of meditation courses, but if I have something like a good Twitter account and things that I share, but also a podcast, then maybe I can find the people that might be interested in my Udemy course, and thereby bring people into the course, because I'm not a very good marketer yet, and the courses that I have on there, it's mostly been Udemy that's been marketing those for me. So those are just people that are randomly coming onto Udemy, but a podcast is much more targeted, and the people that are listening to it will give me ideas of what's the type of content I want to put in this course. So that'll give me a really good sense of what kind of content is needed.
Good. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one of the things is everybody likes different people. So there's 8 billion people on the planet, right?
Right.
And I always say if you have a couple thousand of them listening to you and they become your customers, is that as much or more than you can handle? And I find that what happens with something like any podcast in any particular category or topic is you get people will listen to this one, that one, this one, that one, this one. They'll listen to a whole bunch of them, and they'll say, I don't like that person for whatever reason, and it's all personal. Like it's just their personal. I don't like the pitch of their voice. I don't like that they're a man or they're a woman, or I don't like that they're younger or older, or
their personality,
and everything else. And that's the beauty of it, because your personality really comes out in your podcast. And those people that are like, yeah, like this is my community, my tribe, however you want to describe the group, soul community, soul tribe, and it gives them all a way to come together. And one of the things that really happens with podcasting, it happens a little bit with blogging, and certainly it happens a lot on Facebook and Twitter because they're set up that way, but your podcast can be shared, right? And so I download it onto my phone, and then I'm listening. I think this is really cool. So you go here, put this in and just listen to this. Wow, it's really cool. Yeah, so here's where you go to get it, and there's a lot of that type of sharing that goes on. Not so much with the websites or the blogs. I just don't notice it as much. But it's just like with the podcasting, there's that deeper. It's also like, would you like to read this blog that I thought was really cool?
Mm-hmm.
No, I got way too much to. But listen to this on your way to work. I just thought it was great.
Yeah, it's like having an intimate conversation with a good friend, and I don't think there's anything that comes as close as podcasting as that kind of connection.
Right. Okay, so what I like to do now, if it's okay with you, is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go to iTunes, and we're going to go take a look at your podcast. All right, so bring it up. So here we are. We're in the new and noteworthy section. So congratulations. There's the Information Freedom Podcast. I was so happy when you told me you were there. And we're in the category Health, Alternative Health. So I think the reason why you chose this category was brilliant. It's the reason I tell everybody to choose this particular category, the categories that they choose. So I was wondering if you could just explain why you picked the category that you did.
Well, initially I wanted to put it under the category Health, which is a very broad category. But then I took a look at what's in the category Health, and it's just all over the place. And so then I thought, well, there's going to be thousands of topics in there, and it's like, people will get lost in that. So I thought, well, it could also go under a subcategory, alternative health or self-help, but I figured alternative health was broad enough for me that I think it would fit in well, and plus it increased my chances of being noticed by an audience that might be interested in that topic.
Right, and you definitely were noticed.
Right.
Which is really exciting. Cool. So what I'd like to do now is I'm just going to do a search on meditation. Because I think it's really important when you're doing your podcast that you kind of get a feel for what's in this particular ecosystem that we call iTunes. It's the 800-pound gorilla. It's where 80%, if not more, of your listeners are going to be coming from. So we've got podcasts here at the top. So let's just go look at some of them. And I just have to say, this guy here, he's been podcasting for can't be over 10 years because he's not 10 years old, as long as me. And I always used to get really frustrated because I did an alternative health podcast, and he always beat me. He was like number 3, and I was always number 4. He was number 1, and I was number 2. And the funny thing about it is, at the time, he only had one podcast. So I just want to share this with you because it's possible for you to have multiple podcast shows. Okay, you have your one now, but you could do teenage meditation show podcast, or you could do meditation for animal lovers. I mean, whatever type of topic you want. You could have all sorts of different shows if you wanted to niche it out.
Niche it down, yeah.
Niche it down. And of course, that sounds like a lot of work because, well, you know, if you had 4 meditation podcasts, I did them all weekly, and they were 20 minutes, and then there's this editing time, and it was like overwhelming, right? So that's why I wanted to hear what this guy did. He did one podcast. One episode, right? And that's what made me even madder, because I had like 100, and he had 1, and he was beating me. But his whole strategy, he's got about 8 now. So, you know, in 9 years, he's posted 8 times.
Wow.
And here he is in the top 10, right? But his whole strategy, so I looked at, like, what is he doing, right? He just put this meditation up. You listen to the meditation, you go, oh, that's really cool. I really like it. And then go to my site. And then you would go to his site, and you could buy meditation CDs. So that's all that happened. Was new people kept coming and coming and coming. They listened for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or however long it was. And then they, at the end, if you want to know more, just go over to my site, www.qigonmeditation.com. See you there. And I thought, wow, an interesting way to drive traffic. So
for sure.
Yeah. So if you're thinking of different areas where you want to do meditation, and you've got to kind of split up, you could say, you know what? I think there's a lot of, meditation for stress. And you just put up one meditation that deals with stress, and then you say, you know what, if you want to know more, you can go, and then you send them to do something, right? And he's been around forever and doing that, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Is there a reason why he gets away with posting only a couple episodes and still being at the top?
Yeah, because, so here, that's a great question. The things that get you to the top are, first of all, your keywords in your title. So he has Qigong meditation. That's obviously his keywords. The second thing that gets you there is listeners and rating. So people come once, they listen to the meditation, they go away. iTunes says, okay, got that figured out. There's a lot of people coming and listening to him. And some of them, I haven't, well, we can just check, see what sort of, so what sort of reviews does he get? He's got 1. Horrible, don't recommend.
Ouch.
Ouch. That was recent too, September 12th. Like, if you look, 2007 was the last time he did it. 2006 was that would be about when I started, late 2005, early 2006 was when I started that podcast.
So it sounds like iTunes is not quite on top of their search algorithm.
No, they're not a Google. Don't want to have no intention of being. This is all free stuff that just, as long as it's on meditation and it's kind of right, no problem. And because of where he's at, he's still probably getting lots of people listening and possibly moving on to, this is not how I would recommend somebody do it. You're a related podcast. I only know, like, he did the bare minimum, but he did it like 8 years ago.
So it's just the age he's got going for him, the
Yep.
maturity or something.
Yeah, he's got maturity going for him. He's got the keyword going for him. He's got that it actually is a meditation, because they are. I think they all, almost all are meditations, and he was in kind of at the right time, and it still is. So I don't think he would be hard for you to be higher than.
Yeah, it's the same with that the third one on the top. That one is also, it's like they haven't posted anything for a year or something.
Since August 2004.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the things that I look at when it comes to kind of looking at the competition, well, the first thing is you don't have serious competition. I mean, from the two we've looked at, right?
Right.
One's June 2004. He's number one, or she's number one. Meditation Society of Australia. 48 reviews. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at that. 33 5-star, 9 4 stars, and then a smattering. You're going to get a smattering. You know, someone's not going to like you. Just, you know, accept it and move on, right?
Well, it makes it real too.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It does, because like, who has 100% 5 stars?
Yeah, because I know a couple of marketers. They're really good about rallying their tribe up, and they just get like 200 perfect reviews, and you just know that they got some help there.
That's right. That's right. So I look at this. I say, learn to meditate. Meditation podcast. Meditation Society of Australia. This is where you put your name in the podcast show, and I've recently discovered that this is a very powerful field that we don't take advantage of. So you might want to put like your name, comma, master meditator, or well, I'm not sure what type of meditation you're teaching, Siko. So, but whatever it is, you can put a few of those words in this section here where you've got the Meditation Society of Australia, and I would also add some more keywords in the heading, because some people might want stress relief as an example instead of and they may not know that meditation is the answer. Like, I'm really stressed out. How do I relieve stress? So, in my Weight Loss in the Mind podcast, we were pretty much always ranked in the top 10 or 15, but I had in there as well, it was like NLP, so I had NLP in there. So it was like Weight Loss in the Mind, and then there was a little bar, and then it was NLP and lose weight and diet and fitness and exercise. So we ended up, you might search for exercise podcasts and you come up with us, and it's kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And then once you think the customer or the listener thinks that it's interesting and they listen to you, your job is to keep them listening, right? So you have to be relevant. Obviously, you can't put, how to make $1 million in business and have a meditation that has nothing to do with that topic, right?
Right.
So we're not talking about tricking anybody as much as it is. This is a solution that you may not have thought of, and we want to make sure it's positioned there. And what
and I don't want anybody to go to my podcast thinking they're getting something that they're not, because then they'll just leave a bad review anyway. So
exactly, and it's funny how so many people don't think of it that way. So those are the two areas that I really suggest we look strongly at. Then the description doesn't seem to be as related to ranking high in iTunes. However, it's very, very important because people read it, right? So it's very important for you to get them to make, for them to make the decision, I'm actually going to listen to one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot more space than this particular podcast is using that they could be using for a description, right? So who is your audience? What can they get out of the podcast? What can they expect? A little bit about who you are. All that sort of information that you can get in the description is all going to help. And I think oftentimes we don't think about it in terms of, this is kind of the sales part of it, or the convincing part of it, or the enrolling part of it. where this is the only chance you really have before they either click and go away, to convince them that, yeah, like this is the answers to some of your problems, and come in here and find out what you think, right?
Right. And I can just change that on the fly on the server
Yeah.
end, the title and my name.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is see if I can share different. I'm going to see if I can share a different screen. And this is the Edit the Podcast show. So just like a quick review, you've got your dashboard. If you go into the dashboard, you can post a new episode. In this particular case, we're looking at the show. So there's your author profile. There's your categories, your theme. This is the custom URL, meditationfreedom.mypodcastworld.com. Now, I don't think I said this in the course, actually, and I'm going to have to put a lecture. Once you're approved in iTunes, iTunes will send you an email with a link that if you click on the link, it opens iTunes and it shows you your meditation. In that link is a long number, and you want to take that number, it's about 6 or 8 digits long, and put it in iTunes here and save. Because what that means is when you go to your public URL here, and then you click on this, it'll actually open it up in iTunes.
Oh, okay.
And subscribe you automatically. Now, my programmers may have changed it so you don't have to, but that's kind of our thinking on it. And then here's the title, Meditation Freedom Podcast. You probably don't need to say podcast because it's in a podcast directory. So that just saves you 7 letters and a space that you can use for something else. So I'm not going to save this, so I can write on here, don't worry, it won't make any changes. And I would go something like this, and then, so what, are there any other terms you would use instead of meditation?
Mindfulness would be another one.
Okay, any more?
Um,
Stress relief, stress-free.
right. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. And you know what? You might be reading something somewhere a month from now or a year from now, and you say, oh, that would be a really, my meditations look after that problem. Just add it in.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure I'll find some more benefits that I could stress in there.
Yeah,
appeal to people in terms of the benefits.
Right, and that's the key is the benefits. Then the tagline, where meditation meets daily life, beautiful. Then your long description, good. Your tags.
And then my name, where would I change that?
Okay. So do you want to have mindfulness and stress relief in your title?
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay.
You don't get penalized for that, right? I mean,
Nope.
if you make tweaks like that.
No. Whoops. Okay, well, I'm not. I went in too long ago. It timed me out.
Right.
So you're going to have to do it.
Yep, it's on my to-do list.
And I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop presenting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sign into my account. Because you asked a really good question about changing the author. And this is actually one of the things that I can't say the most proud of, but really proud of. So I'm just going to go into, let me just share the screen now. Okay, so here I am at the dashboard. And up here we have our stats, the snippets, the host profile. So that's where your name is. And just click on that. And here's for one of my shows. Now, I happen to have quite a few podcasts that I do with different people, or have done with different people. They're not all up to date. And you can see for each podcast show, what I did was I put my name and the person's name there. So basically it would come up and it would say, like, if we were doing it together, it would be like meditation, freedom, and then it'd be by Seiko and Scott. And it works nicely that way. But one of the things that I noticed was, if you know people that are in the meditation field or who are really really popular, if you go and put their names in the profile name, it shows up in iTunes, looks at that and says, okay, this must be part of what it's about. So you can see I've done that a few times with this first one, and this one here with trading stocks and options, and this one down here. And so that's basically one of the ways that I've used it. So you put your first name in and your last name, and then you put a little bit of text. You can only go so far. It'll tell you you've used too much and you got to edit it back. And then the last name, I put a bunch of other text in here as well. And then you just go down, hit save, and it saves it.
Interesting.
So I want to show you. I'm going to actually change to back to iTunes, because I just want to show you the example that opened my just could not believe it. And so here we are back at back at iTunes. So I'm going to do a search for Seth Godin, who is a well-known author. Okay, so here he is, number 1. Well, this guy, John Lee Loomis, is a podcaster, and he's number 2. So, why is he number 2? Because there's Seth's name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, interesting. Well, how many times did he talk to him? Couldn't actually find any time that he talked to him.
So, well, why would he name that person then if he's not talking to him?
Well, maybe he did talk to him once.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of episodes in there.
Yeah. So, there's 126 episodes.
Buried in there.
And chats with Tim Ferriss and all these people, and gets inspiration from Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, Jim Rohn, and Steve Jobs, and everything else. So I never noticed Steve Jobs before, but since he's kind of the guy responsible for this, let's just take a look. Podcast there is Entrepreneurs on Fire again.
Ah, okay, so he's figured out something.
Yes. So one thing you can do in your particular case is look at who is the top 5 podcasts for meditation, and maybe stress-free and that sort of stuff, and then just say, Seiko Ruud listens to, and go listen to the podcast, see what they're like, because that's always a good idea. It's a good feeling when you listen to really bad podcasts in your field, and you just think, well, nobody's going to be listening to these people very long, particularly when they can listen to my podcast, which is so much better. But having said that, there may be people that are really popular in the meditation world, or I was going to say even in yoga or related areas, and just say, okay, I'm just going to add them in here. John Lee Loomis shares quotes from, and he's got a list of all these people, right? And this is his 2-minute podcast. So there's another strategy, right? He's got a second show. You could have a second show, and this is just 2 minutes of mindfulness.
Right.
Really. How popular is it? I don't know. We never know. He's got 12 fairly good reviews. But again, he's the sort of guy that really pushes it out to his group and should have no problem getting reviews.
Right.
One really bad one mediocre one, and 10 good ones. However, and I'm just looking at this as ideas and suggestions in terms of how you can take advantage of the podcasting, because there are people that just want, we love the quote of the day. Great. Well, if I'm part of your tribe, your community, and you say, you know what, I'm just posting a real 2-minute quick mindfulness tip, quote, something, you know. And the good thing is, in my podcast world, you can schedule all your podcasts, right? So
Right.
you could take 2 hours and just 2 hours is, you know, do 40 of them, and then you've got one going out a week for most of the year.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then you just take advantage, and then it's just a matter of getting the getting the rankings and letting iTunes send you that traffic.
Right.
And
That-
I mean,
That's
we
a
could
cool
get
idea.
into, you can get into posting it on Facebook. You can get into posting it on Twitter and all those things as well. Okay, so one last thing I want to show you, and then see if there's any more questions. Go back to my podcast world and the dashboard. Come on. And I'm just going to go to an episode. Doesn't matter what one, it's pretty much the same for everybody. Actually, I'm going to go to yours. Okay, so down here, it's good having all this text, by the way. It adds a lot of meat for search engines.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
a little more extra work, but it's worth it.
Yeah. So when you can, most people are not going to come here and do this. You know, there'll be some traffic that comes here and clicks on it and listens to it, but predominantly the traffic is going to come from iTunes. But if you have, say, a blog or a website, then what you can do is
Episode 6 with Russell.
start playing, and then it's got this embed thing. So this code here, you just have to click copy code. If you take this and you put it into your, say you have a WordPress blog, and you do you make a post, but you do the HTML tab, not the Looks Live tab, you can just post this into your blog, put a little bit of text on it, and now people coming to your site are going to see this with the player on your site.
Yeah, and I actually use Blueberry right now for that, so it's already doing that.
Okay. Oh, good. Good. All right.
The
Excellent.
Blueberry post plugin or whatever that's called.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Because that to me is really important. I didn't build my podcast world to be a place for people to go as much as I built it as a place for people to create podcasts that they put in iTunes or on their sites.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you're doing, so you're interviewing people, right?
Right.
So you could take that code and you could email it to the person you interviewed and said, here is the player for the episode that we recorded.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the people that listen to my show they don't even have that kind of technology, so that the only thing they can do is go to a web page and click the play button.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to them it's too hard to figure out how to use iTunes and stuff. So.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So you're going to get a whole new group of people just through iTunes.
Yeah, exactly. And then a different group of people through the web page.
Yeah. Now, if you interview somebody, does that person have their own website?
Most of them will, but you know, like I have the next guest that I'm interviewed she doesn't even have a cell phone. I mean, you know, no social network other than, you know, word of mouth type of network.
Right. Well, I didn't have a cell phone until last summer, so I'm with her.
Yeah.
So that's a question that you just want to ask your guests. Do you have a website? Yes. Well, if you like, when we're done and I have this all finished and I have it posted, I can send you the code for a player that you can just post onto in your blog. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Because then they're going to hear you, they're going to be exposed to you, and it's like, well, some of those people are going to say, I want to know more about Seco, and how do I find you and everything else. And you just say, you know, here's a little bit of text. Nobody likes to do work, right? But if you do a little bit of work, you can have this in quite a few places, right? little bit of text, what you talked about, and then underneath, if you want to know more about Seco, just go here, or more about mindfulness meditation, or however you want to word it, right? Now all
Yeah.
of a sudden you could be on 10 or 20, 30 other websites with a link back to you, all related to mindfulness, which is really, really powerful from the Google perspective.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right, well, we've been going for a while. I just wanted to ask you if there was any questions you had for me, Seco, and I wanted to thank you also for taking time out to do this with me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and maybe show me a little bit about the stats and how to understand them, because right now I don't necessarily understand, what's the difference between a listen versus a listener, and how can you even tell whether somebody is, for example, if somebody is subscribed versus somebody who's just listening to one episode or something.
Okay, great questions. This is still working here. So when you sign in, we give the stat, kind of a stat overview. This happens to be for all podcasts, but you could select a podcast and just see the stats for that individual one. And this tends to be what I look at the most, although I tend to look at this page the most. So MPW visitors are just people that went to the page, and then page views.
And those are people that went to that particular page, or the My Podcast World, or to iTunes?
My Podcast World. iTunes doesn't give us any details, which is what makes it really hard. So I can tell you how many times the MP3 file was downloaded from the Amazon servers, because it's on my account in the Amazon server. I can't tell you how many people have subscribed on iTunes, because iTunes knows that and we don't. So what we call subscribers are people that have checked the RSS feed. Okay, so just finding that through for some reason. Actually, let's go back here. So if they've checked the RSS feed, so the way it works is you subscribe in iTunes. iTunes has the RSS feed. You click Get, or it automatically downloads the MP3 to your phone or your computer. Well, we know how many that is. So it has 1,523 subscribers. Yesterday it had 1,275. Well, 1,000 of that 1,200 could be the same 1,000 as in the 1,500, and there's just a little bit of difference in the numbers. Or they could be totally different. So it could be that everybody who checked their RSS feed yesterday, the 1,275 people, none of them checked it today, and it's a different 1,500 people, which means I have 2,700 people subscribing.
Wow.
But you don't know. There's no way of really knowing. So all-time 52,000 subscribers is that's individuals for all, or the 10,000 for year to date. That's individuals. So it's not that's not double counted. But when you look at today, you look at yesterday, could be the same people there who want to know, don't know, right? And live hits tends to be the number of times that the RSS feed is checked. So I could open up iTunes, and every time I open up iTunes, it checks the RSS feeds, and I could do it 4 times. That would be 4 live hits. So you don't know, right? All you know is if it's 0, that's not really very good. If it's, and then you just watch the trends. It's trending up, trending down, that sort of stuff. Then we have. Go ahead.
So the key statistic is really the downloads, right? Because that tells you how many people actually downloaded an episode.
The good news about downloading is every time they've checked or done a survey of podcast listeners, the majority listen to 80% or more of the episode, which means that it's not like when you have the similar stat for a web page is a bounce rate and how long were they on, and
right.
you know, and they can tell. We can't tell how long they were on, so we need to sort of do surveys and find, you know, what people tell us, which we hope is true. So you have a, you know, a 30-second or a 3-second bounce time. So people come, they look 3 seconds. If they don't like it, they're gone, and that's it. Whereas with the podcast, we're pretty confident that they're listening to 80% of what it is. That if they downloaded it, they're listening to 80% of what you said, which means you need to make sure that you don't give a call to action in the last minute, because you know 80% leave before then, right?
Okay, yeah.
You know, so you want to make sure that you're kind of, well, and that's part of the whole, like listening to radio and seeding and closing loops and all that sort of stuff, is like, listen to the end, because at the end I've got a very special gift for you, or listen to the end because this, you know, there's whatever the reason is, right? Now, if it's an interview, it's because my guest today has a really special gift he wants to give you, or if it's a meditation, it's like, listen to the end because you want to come out of the meditation properly. You don't want to be jarred out because you know, blah blah blah. So
Right.
it depends on your content too, right? What you want to say and what's appropriate. But that's kind of a neat statistic. So then we have the other stats page, which I'm hoping isn't going to take forever to go to. And it kind of tells you sort of the same thing on a daily basis, hits listeners, so a little more detail, and again, by the podcast, and also weekly, monthly, yearly, all that sort of stuff. To me, it's kind of nice, you know. The stats are different because this is a different stats program than the other one, and the programmers can't really explain to me why they don't. And the only thing I can think of is the days are different because they're in different time zones, or the way they count is different, or I don't know. But to me, it's good to see the numbers because it makes me feel like, okay, great, you know, it's growing and all the rest of it. But what's really more important to me is location. And this map should come up in a second. There it is. And I can see where, now there's some things like this one here. There's no friggin' way there's 63,703 listeners in that little town in Germany. So there was some bot that occurred, or something occurred. I've never seen Chies Germany before. You know, so there was some electronic internet thing that went on, whether it was hackers or it was, you know, I can't imagine a university professor telling his kids to go listen to one of my podcasts, or students. So you know, you have to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. But the thing is that the majority of people are in the United States, and they're in Europe, and then they're in this part here of Australia. And it's just cool when you see them in other places. And
yeah, it's cool.
From the and there's really, you know, we had one person right up here in the top of Norway or Finland, I forget which, and then we got someone in Turkey. And at the time, you know, if you can imagine, like 8 years ago, there, you know, it was busy here, it was busy here, and then, you know, there was like one person over here, a little bit in Australia, and then there was this one person in Turkey. So on our podcast, we said, you know, we've got somebody listening to us in Turkey, and we just think that's amazing. Like, you know, email us and let us know who you are. And they did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And she was an American that was had moved to Turkey, and she says, yeah, she says, I tell all of my English-speaking friends to listen to your podcast. And it just made us, you know, so now there's 285 of them, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the other thing that this tells me is people that live here and South America, and people that live in Africa and India and China in particular, have a great opportunity to reach the European and North American markets, because these are the people listening, right? And if you're talking here and you follow everything that you've, like what you've done, become new and noteworthy in iTunes, and you know, get ranked highly for your main keywords, you're going to get that traffic. So it's really kind of a, to me, it's a way for people in other areas of the world to communicate what their life is like, or what they're thinking, or their philosophies, or their mindfulness exercises to the rest of the world.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, and in the United States, we have a strong Hispanic community, and I was just down in Colombia and Ecuador and Peru, and they all speak Spanish. So there's a way. So it's not like, well, I don't know English. I think doesn't matter to me what language you speak. There are people all over the world that are in places where they have money to spend that would want to be listening to you and taking advantage of your knowledge.
Right.
That's how I look at it, anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So hopefully that helps you with the statistics.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, good. The best advice I can give is you got people listening, and that's really important. And
exactly,
it's going to go on forever. As long as you keep your account, you don't delete your account, and the only accounts I delete from my podcast world are accounts that were open February 1st, and in April 1st, the last time a person was there was February 1st, because that's just spam accounts.
Right.
But if someone's got podcasts that are live and they don't post for, like, I have one of my students 2 years ago stopped posting, and then 2 months ago emails me, says, Scott, I can't believe 10,000 people have listened to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't know, so I'm talking more now.
Yeah.
And you never know what happens, right? Like you could, I don't think it'll ever happen, but you could post and there's no downloads for 6 months. And then you go away and you look at 2 years later and there's 100,000 downloads because somebody listened and they were influential and they just said to their friends online, I just think this guy's amazing, or this woman is amazing, and all those people went in and listened. So you just never know where the traffic's going to come from.
Right. Well, and that's one of the reasons I like interviewing people, because they all have totally a different network they're plugged into, and then, like, after the show, I give them a link and tell them, please let your friends and your network know.
Yeah.
So it gets a whole different exposure.
That's right. That's a great plan.
Yeah.
So any other questions or comments you'd like to make?
Not at this time. So far, I'm just going to keep plugging away and posting an episode a week, and try to stay consistent.
Good. So I'm pretty sure you're a member of our Face group for Power Podcasters.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm looking at doing, and you kind of touched on it a bit when you were talking about the reviews and stuff, is growing that group and then having everyone just post their podcast URL from iTunes into it, so that we can all listen to some of them, learn from each other, but also have the purpose of giving reviews and some comments and subscriptions, because that's going to help all of us rise to the top. And this is the first time I sort of said this, and I'm going to post it in Power Podcasters, and I'm going to post it in the group, because this is part of why I want everybody to join the Facebook group, because it's like, here's a list of podcasts, click on it, listen to a few, give a good review, and leave a comment in the group if you think, wow, like the sound wasn't really very good, it was really staticky, or whatever, or wow, this is a really good podcast, everybody else should be listening to it, and just creating that little community that we've got that helps everybody. Like, rising tide lifts all boats is my...
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. All right. Well, thanks, Seiko. Really appreciate having you on here with me. And
you're welcome, and thank you for helping me out with this podcast.
Okay. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. All right.